I'm Melissa.
And I'm Lee, and we are busy mums, company founders, and all-round early learning nerds. Welcome to our podcast, Growing Little Humans.
Kids aren't born with a user manual, so each week we'll try and cover many topics that you guys encounter and worry about each and every day while you're raising your little humans. Natalie is a qualified early childhood educator with over 25 years of experience in early years education. She is also a certified Circle of Security parent educator and COSP classroom Tier 1 facilitator. With postgraduate qualifications in pre- and postnatal family care and support, Natalie has been supporting families with sleep and settling for more than 15 years.
Her passion lies in helping new families navigate the precious early days and beyond with their children by offering a better understanding of children's needs, cues, and capabilities. Natalie collaborates closely with early years educators to provide workable strategies for creating an emotional and physically safe sleep space in their early years services. Hi, Natalie. Hi. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, Melissa and Leah. I really appreciate it.
So, Nat, today's topic is all about babies and sleep patterns. So, first of all, we wanted to just start off by talking about how important is sleep and, why is sleep so significant, especially to babies?
Yeah, great start. So sleep, as you know, is at the foundation of supporting our little ones in being able to develop, consolidate their learning, memory consolidation. There's so many benefits around sleep. And the tricky thing when we were looking at sleep, especially in those first early years, is that it's changing constantly. And that can be a real challenge for families that are not really sure of how to manage that and what to expect of little ones. So as part of our work, we often go in and normalize what to expect, what changes may be happening at a certain period or certain age, so that families can start to feel a little bit more comfortable in how or be a bit more prepared in what to expect from sleep at a certain period of time.
Great. And so what is safe sleep, Natalie?
Yeah. So Melissa, safe sleep is creating an environment where a baby sleeps day and night that does reduce that risk of SIDS, especially in those precious early months and beyond. So when we're looking at safe sleep, we also look at that emotional aspect. It has to be somewhere where a little one feels safe and secured and nurtured and has that connection to their attachment figure. A safe sleep space is often a place which is usually a cot that has a firm flat mattress and some safe bedding that really just helps a child have an independent place for sleep. But it can be within a parent or caregiver's room that they can then be monitored closely and be checked in regularly to look at their breathing and the rise and fall of their chest and things like that.
There's been a lot of changes, Natalie, hasn't there, over the years with defining what is safe? Because I remember, like, when we had our little ones, it was really, everybody was worried about the colour coordination of the bumpers with the rugs and everything. And now they've kind of defined that that's not really safe anymore to have those bumpers in the cots and that type of thing.
That's so true, Leah. And it's sometimes really hard to get your head around. So this, all the new families that are coming into this experience and wanting to set up these beautiful nurseries, it's really hard with so much stuff out there and knowing what is safe and what is not. And yeah, in our generation, sometimes we'd have the big frilly bumpers and the toys and things like that. And now we know that having nothing in the cot, and even when we're looking at bedding for our little ones, we've moved away from the traditional just sort of sheets and tucking them in to more those sleeping bags and the sleep suits, just so that we're really making sure that they are there's nothing else in the cot to bring on that risk of SIDS.
And Absolutely, and I think that's everybody, you know, all parents are trying to do the best for their babies, obviously, all the time. So, Natalie, what's actually going on when babies are sleeping, and what is happening if they're not getting enough sleep?
So, if they're not getting enough sleep, you will often find that sometimes, in terms of the way that they're developing, can start to halter. They can start to get a little bit more sick. There may be a drop in their immunity. With our littlies, though, it sort of happens over a period of time. So we'll often find that 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 overtiredness or overstimulation will build up in a period of 2 or 3 days or even over weeks. And that's when we can start to see that huge sleep debt take its toll. And our little ones, maybe when they're really overtired, just generally their little temperament will be a bit out of sorts. They'll just need that extra connection time. They won't want to leave a little their caregivers' sort of arms, and they can find it really hard just to sort of manage the day-to-day pattern of life.
Okay. And how much sleep do babies and toddlers need, Natalie?
Yeah, so total sleep in a 24-hour period will vary on age and sleep needs of each child. But, you know, when we're looking at a 24-hour pattern of sleep, a child between 0 to 4 months of age will often need between 14 to 17 hours of sleep in that 24-hour period.
And that's a lot,
It's a
isn't
lot of
it?
sleep.
That's a lot of
It's a lot of
sleep.
sleep.
Yeah.
It is. And remember, in that 0 to 4 month sort of age group, sleep is broken up all through that 24-hour period. So sometimes it will be, you know, some of that quota will be in the day as well as nighttime. And it's not sort of till they get to that 4 months and beyond. So 4 months to 12 months, that sleep quota in a 24-hour period often drops between 12 to 16 hours in a 24-hour period. And that's broken down to a few naps in the day as well as their nighttime rhythm. And then we sort of see from that 1 to 3-year-old more of that 12 to 15 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period. And for a little 1-year-old, that can often look like 2 sort of day naps and then some sleep overnight. For a 3-year-old, that might look like they're sort of transitioning to that 1 sleep a day and then having that sleep time overnight. And then when we're looking at our 3 to 5-year-olds, often they have dropped their middle of the day sleep and they're on just their nighttime sleep. And so their sleep quota in a 24-hour period is often between that 11 to 13 hours.
So, Natalie, I know they're also individual, the children, like they all, you know, have different patterns. And, you know, for some parents, it's a really big problem when babies get their day and their night mixed up and then they're trying to sleep all day and they're not sleeping at night. So, you know, that can be a problem that some parents are experiencing.
Yeah, very true, Leah. And it can be a struggle. And sometimes, you know, in those early days, we sort of expect that they're going to be on that 24-hour pattern of sleep. But to support our littlies, especially our young babies, that's when we can sort of keep them out in the light during the day and then sort of offer those quieter, calming cues at nighttime so that they start to get a sense that there is a difference between day and night.
Day and night.
Yeah, that often rectifies quite quickly. But then we sort of get to a point when our littlies around that 4 or 5 month mark start to become really excited about the world and they can get easily distracted and life's so exciting and they start to understand that they're a separate being from their carer or their parent. And the daytimes can feel really distracting and they can often start to have these really short sleeps. And that sort of sometimes in turn means that they can start to snack when they feed because you know, there's so much going on. And then what we find is that all of a sudden at nighttime, they're waking more often and needing these really big, full hunger feeds at night. And then that means it's another switch where we feel like there's a bit of day-night confusion going on. So to sort of support a little one, especially if you're finding that your little one's going through that period of being really excited by the world and not really feeding properly or having these short snack feeds throughout the day is just to make sure that you're really consistent with offering that opportunity to feed for hunger throughout the day. And if your little one is so excited by the world, which they are at that age, sometimes just finding that quiet space and just lowering giving them a lower stimulating environment to feed and then coming back out into the action works really well and really sort of helps them get back on track with that day-night pattern.
And I guess that's routines as well, isn't it? It's like about them having those routines so that they kind of learn the pattern of day and night.
Yeah, and that's when you'll hear a lot. You might have already heard that lots of people try to establish sort of like a feed, play, sleep routine or a pattern. And that works really well in terms of just being able to make sure that when a little one wakes up, they can have a really good full feed, and then they can have a period of activity and play. And then as those tide cues appear, that they can be prepared for sleep. But it's also really important to note that a feed, play, sleep routine works really well, and it does come into its own around that 5-6 month period. But families can start to implement that at a younger age. But I do want them to know that it is really common that sometimes a feed will coincide with a sleep, and that's really normal at that age.
So when you were talking about all those external stimulus that the kids have, is that sometimes a reason why they drop their daytime sleep, because there is so much going on and they don't want to miss it?
Definitely. Or they're starting to practice and learn their new physical skills. Or when they're young, it might be just the simple, just finding their voice, and, hearing their voice while they're in their sleep space can be so exciting, and they can get that second wind and stay awake. But often when children, and they will for that first sort of 12 months of life, they'll go through that period of needing to eventually drop down. By 12 months of age, most children will be on a 2 sleep a day pattern. Families will know when they're ready to drop down to sleep, because often there'll be little signs. There'll often be some resistance when we're offering them their sleep, or all of a sudden it's taking them a little bit longer to settle to sleep for that day sleep. Or we often see it at the end of the day as well, where all of a sudden our little ones are so alert and happy and engaging, or in party mode, we like to say, when they're awake and ready to sort of stay awake for a long part of the night, where they used to go down quite easily. And that's often a telltale sign that they may be ready to drop one of their day sleeps.
I think it's a time that all of us parents are not looking forward to. Everybody's always desperate to keep their child having their day sleep, aren't they?
Oh, they are. And you know what? It in terms of research, we've found out with research that it's only 2.5% of children by the age of 2 that drop their daytime nap. So most 2-year-olds will still be having one middle of the day sleep. And then it's around that 95% of children between the age of 3 to 5 that will have dropped their day sleeps.
It's probably the most productive time for mums, I think. Run around and get everything done while the little one's having a nap. So is there an estimated time when they drop that permanently?
So it's usually around 5, but when you've got families that, as you most likely have experienced yourself, that often we may have a new baby, and we're also dealing with a toddler or a preschooler, and just the thought of dropping that nap can be really daunting when we're preparing for a newborn as well. So I do want to reassure the parents out there that even though a little one may drop their day sleep, it's still really important to offer them a quiet time period in the middle of the day.
Yeah, that's
You might feel like, oh my God, my precious day sleep is gone. It's still okay to offer that quiet time.
We did that in our family. We insisted that our eldest had the quiet time. So even if she wasn't sleeping, she knew that she had to just stay in her room. She had to do puzzles or read books. And, half the time they just fall asleep, playing on their bed anyway, don't they? They're resisting that sleep, but they actually do still need it. So,
It's almost like saying to a preschooler that word sleep in the middle of the day can be very triggering. And so just going, you know what, no, you don't need to go to sleep. It's just some quiet time. We're all having a little bit of a quiet time now is sometimes enough. And then they'll happily go in there. And yeah, 9 times out of 10, they will fall asleep. You're right. So, yeah.
And you kind of touched on establishing the sleep routines before, but can you just, give parents some tips on how to establish good routines, what a good routine might look like, Natalie?
When we're looking at helping families sort of create a lovely pattern to sleep or some structure around sleep, the best place to start is often making sure that we're offering that connection at that transition into sleep. So knowing your little one's tired cues so that you can act on those, preparing a place where you offer a bit of quiet time in the lead up to sleep. You're really consistent with that sleep message as you're pushing your little one to sleep. So anyone in that circle of security, whoever's looking after that little one, they offer the same consistent sleep message. And then popping a little one into their sleep space awake is preferred, but it's often challenging. And that's something that parents really do struggle with. So when you do pop them awake into their cot, drop down to the side of their cot and sit beside them. Offer that parental presence. That's often a really beautiful place to start. And then if a little one starts to cry, you can really start to offer them some voice comfort, some gentle shushing or mattress padding from the side of the cot. That often replicates the sounds from in utero and is quite calming. And then if a little one is really struggling, we can go then and offer that further hands-on support and see how they're going. And if they're not settling at any time, we'll always encourage parents to pick up their child. Offering that upright cuddle when you're doing a settling experience is sometimes a really good sort of reset and connection for that little one. And it tells the parents a lot. So when you offer an upright cuddle after you've tried a little bit of a sleep experience, an upright cuddle will lessen a little one's expectation that they're being fed and that they're actually getting the comfort from their caregiver. And it's a really lovely sort of time. Often we'll find our littlies will snuggle in and take that cuddle. And then as parents, we can sort of then give them one more big kiss, one more big cuddle, and then pop them into their cot and try again. Yeah. But often, and this is something that is often missed when we're talking about setting up new sleep experiences, it's really important that if an experience is not working or is you're not feeling good by what you're implementing or your little one's not responding really well, it's okay to end it, stop the experience, offer that cuddle. If that means that you then need to give them a little feed or a bit of a rock and a cuddle again and get them off to sleep, or even stop the experience altogether and then return to it when those next tired cues appear, we would much prefer you to do that. It just really helps make sure that everyone still approaches sleep in a lovely, calming way and no one's getting too concerned by it all.
Okay, so you're recommending not letting them cry it out. It's more of a soothing, supportive approach.
Yeah, often we talk about making sure that our little ones are getting that. We come from that infant mental health approach. So we really want to make sure that we're building this circle of security, that they understanding that attachment, they understand that their caregiver will come to them when they respond. But it doesn't mean that a caregiver will come and end an experience. It's just that they will come and support them and meet their needs where they're at. So often it can be really challenging. And I know that with any sleep sort of settling methods and things like that, there is no one size fits all approach, unfortunately. And so what works for one family might not work for another. When we're looking at sort of looking at all the different sleep approaches, because there is a lot of information out there, it can be very confusing for families. So when we are working with families, we really like to bring it back down to that individual family. Look at your little one's temperament, because that will often sort of support you in what way you would like to go and settle the child, but also be really comfortable with your sort of level of comfort in terms of seeing your little one distressed. And then also the family dynamics will play a part as well. So, when you're settling a child and you've got multiple children, sometimes as parents we will respond really quickly. I don't know if you guys remember that. If you'll go in rushing because you didn't want the baby to wake up the rest of the house. So family dynamics and stuff like that do come into play when we're looking at a settling method. Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time, for me, my mum was with me when I had my first son, and so a lot of it was that's what she did, and so then she was giving me guidance, not so much what was best practice for now,
but what had
worked for her, and that was tried and tested. So there's a lot of changes in as things progress.
Yeah. And Natalie, I think it's really important that we just touch on SIDS. And, we've come a long way. There's been so much research, in the last, 20, 30 years. My family actually, I had my cousin die of SIDS. So that's something we experienced firsthand. Yeah, and it's a terrible thing when you can't pinpoint what happened. There's no explanation. So can you just tell us about what the current thoughts are behind SIDS and the best prevention methods?
Of course. Yeah, and even though we have come a long way, like you said, Leah, there still is unexplained deaths of babies that are still happening. So it's really important when we are looking after little ones, and even when we're looking at in an early year setting, it's really important that we follow safe sleep practices when caring for every baby. So,
absolutely.
With SIDS or SUDI, which is that broad term that is used to describe that sudden and unexpected death of a baby, we are looking at our governing bodies to sort of lead the way in setting up those safe sleep practices. Lots of S's, sorry guys. But with Red Nose Australia, that is Australia's leading governing body. The other leading bodies that look for safe sleep are the American Academy of Pediatrics that sort of govern that, and the Lullaby Trust in the UK. So what we do know is that SIDS is multifactorial. So what that means is that there is often 3 factors that will need to sort of come into play that can make a vulnerable child be a little bit more at risk of SIDS. So a triple risk model, when we're looking at SIDS, is something that we need to be really aware of. So when we're looking at SIDS, one of the factors in this triple risk model is a vulnerable baby. So studies show that babies that were born prematurely or of low birth weight, children that are exposed to tobacco smoke or illicit drugs during pregnancy are often known to have a higher rate of SIDS.
Yeah.
So that second factor in the triple risk model is that critical development period. So we know as research that the baby's first year of life is often the most vulnerable developmental period for SIDS. It can happen at other times of a baby's life, but it's often between that first 6 months of their life, with that peak between 2 to 4 months of age. So during that period, babies are often growing and developing rapidly. So there's often a real increase there. So 90% of SIDS often occurs in that first 6 months of life, with that peak between that 2 to 4 months of age. And then the other third factor in that triple risk model is that external stressor. So outside stressors to a vulnerable baby, such as tobacco smoke or tummy sleeping or side sleeping when they're not physically able to get themselves out of that position. the overheating or covering their head or even having an illness and low immaturity or having a respiratory infection can increase a little one's exposure or risk to SIDS. But it is really important to know that most babies can experience these conditions and survive, but a vulnerable baby is the one that may not be able to overcome them or right in that critical development period.
And thus, I guess it's our safe sleep practices, isn't it, Natalie? Like just putting everything into play.
Exactly. And so for parents to reduce that likelihood of that SIDS occurring in those that first year of life, it's really important to follow the 6 key recommendations for safe sleeping. They include that always placing baby on their back for sleep, sort of keeping baby's face uncovered and their head uncovered. So we know babies control their temperature through their face and their head. So keeping their heads uncovered does reduce that risk of overheating. And then keeping baby smoke-free before or after birth. So no smoking around baby or where baby sleeps. And then offering that safe sleeping environment night and day. So we know that the safest place for a baby is to sleep in their own space on a firm, flat mattress with safe bedding. And then sort of to keep a baby in sort of a room sharing environment with their parents or a caregiver in that first 6 months. So they're in their own sleep space, but they're in the room with their family. And then breastfeeding where possible. So if we can follow those 6 key recommendations, we do reduce that risk of SIDS or SUDI occurring.
So, Natalie, we are so excited that the Wishing Tree Early Learning Centres are actually going to have all of our teachers sleep trained. So we can work together, with Safe Sleep Space to ensure that, our teachers are offering some consistency between what's happening at home and what's happening, in the Early Learning Centre. So can you just tell us, is that, significant that we're trying to have that consistency between the two spaces?
Oh, yeah, Leah, it's actually amazing. And we're so excited to be partnering with you and helping your educators along this journey. So keeping those pathways of communication open and respecting each family as sort of unique and working in partnership with them will be really, really beneficial in terms of just being able to support that safe and secure environment in the world of sleep. And just having that there for families is just so reassuring, because we'll often find that the educators will be the first people that our parents will see after a challenging night. And just to know those educators will be able to support them and share that knowledge is so beneficial to those families.
And Natalie, can you let me know what the Safe Sleep Space offers Wishing Tree families?
Of course. So we have a range of services that we provide. So on our Safe Sleep Space website, we've got lots of information, lots of blog posts. We have video footage. We've got a beautiful pre and postnatal family support program where there's a lot of information there that our families can refer to. There's also downloadable copies of what sort of sleep will look like for each age. So we often offer a variety of things. We also do lots of parent sessions where we can jump on and talk to families and answer their questions. We run beautiful telephone conversations too.
Okay, so they can one-on-one have a session, Natalie.
Yeah, definitely. We do that. We help families all around the world. So we can do Teams meetings and bits and pieces and have a chat and just support them on their journey. Because it's often just checking in and using us as a sounding board, which families love.
And sometimes I think people have questions, but they just don't want to ask them. They just want to have that like you said, one-on-one supportive environment where they can feel free to ask their questions.
And because kids are so individual, aren't they? Like what one child experiences and one family experiences, another doesn't. So
we were actually speaking about this the other day. How different, You can have how many kids you have. One have a completely different experience of sleep than the other one does. So
Oh, that's so true. They're all very different. That's what we say too. Every sort of family that comes back and has a little bit of a check-in with us will say, oh, wow, all the things we learnt with the first one, we're relearning how to approach sleep this time
totally
around.
different.
So it is very different. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Natalie, for taking the time to share your knowledge today with all of our families. We really appreciate it, and it's just been so enlightening.
Thank you so much for having me. And like I said, I'm really looking forward to working with your educators and for the families to check in. But good luck with everything, Melissa and Leah, and thanks so much for having us.
Thanks, Natalie.
And here come the legals. Our podcast is purely brought to you for educational and entertainment purposes. We are just two hectic mums, and we are certainly not licensed therapists.
this podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of licensed or qualified professionals. And if you do need some help, please seek out some professional advice.